morning mist clung to the Douglas firs like something living, something that didn't want to let go. Special Agent Marcus Chen stood at the edge of the trailhead, watching his breath join the fog, and tried to remember the last time he'd worked a recovery operation this deep in civilian territory. The ranger uniform felt wrong on him, too loose in the shoulders, too green, too honest. "Radio check," he said into his walkie-talkie, using the civilian frequency. The Foundation-issued encrypted communicator sat hidden in his jacket pocket, silent for now. "Copy, Ranger Chen," came the response from Dr. Sarah Vickers, her voice professionally neutral despite the absurdity of the titles. "Ranger Vickers here, about 2 clicks west of your position." "Ranger Morrison, southwest quadrant," added the third voice, belonging to Marcus's usual partner, Jake Morrison. Jake sounded amused. He always did when they played dress-up for the civilians. The cover story was simple: 3 park rangers investigating reports of missing hikers in the Cascade National Forest. The reality was considerably more complicated. SCP-9821 Alpha, a Class B ambulatory anomaly, had escaped containment during transport 6 days ago. The tracking beacon had gone dark somewhere in this 70-square-mile stretch of old-growth forest. Site-43 wanted it back. Site-43 wanted it back quietly. Marcus adjusted the backpack containing his actual equipment. Portable cant counter, emergency containment foam, enough amnestics to dose a small town, and his sidearm loaded with specialized rounds. The kind of things park rangers definitely didn't carry. "Beginning sweep pattern," he said, and stepped into the woods. The forest swallowed sound. Marcus noticed it immediately, that peculiar deadness to the air that went beyond simple isolation. His footsteps seemed muted, absorbed by the carpet of needles beneath his boots. Even the birds sounded distant, muffled, like he was hearing them through layers of cloth. He'd been walking for maybe 20 minutes when he heard the first scream. It came from ahead and to the left, high-pitched and terrified, cutting through the muted atmosphere like a knife. Marcus's hand went to his concealed weapon automatically, his body dropping into a defensive crouch behind a massive cedar trunk. "Did anyone else hear that?" he whispered into his radio. "Hear what?" Sarah's voice crackled back. "The scream. Female, approximately 300 meters northwest of my position." Silence. Then Jake. "Marcus, I'm not hearing anything. You sure?" Marcus was sure. He'd heard it as clearly as he heard his own breathing. But the forest had already swallowed the sound, leaving nothing but that oppressive quiet. "Investigating," he said, and moved toward the source. The trees grew denser here, their branches weaving together overhead to block out what little light penetrated the fog. Marcus's hand stayed near his weapon as he picked his way through the undergrowth. The cant counter in his pack was reading baseline reality, no temporal or spatial distortions. Whatever SCP-9821 Alpha was, it wasn't here. Not yet. He found the source of the scream 15 minutes later, or rather, he found nothing at all. Just more trees, more fog, more oppressive silence. No signs of struggle, no blood, no indication anyone had been here recently except for a slight depression in the moss that might have been a footprint. Might have been. Marcus was about to radio in when he heard the second sound. "Please, God, please no." His own voice, coming from deeper in the woods, begging. Every hair on Marcus's neck stood up. He spun toward the sound, weapon drawn now, training overriding the ice-cold fear flooding his veins. But there was nothing, just trees and fog and that terrible muffled quiet. "This is Chen," he said into his radio, forcing his voice steady. "We have a situation. I'm hearing vocalizations, anomalous in nature. One of them is my voice." "Say again?" Sarah's voice had lost its professional neutrality. "Did you say your voice?" "Affirmative, playing back words I haven't spoken, requesting immediate rendezvous at my coordinates." He sent the GPS ping through his encrypted communicator, bypassing the civilian radio. Within 30 minutes, both Sarah and Jake had arrived, moving through the forest with the practiced silence of Foundation field agents who'd done this too many times before. Sarah looked like she'd actually been a park ranger once, comfortable in the uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. She had her own pack of equipment and a tablet displaying real-time data from their various sensors. "Talk to me," she said, all business now that the pretense was dropped. Marcus repeated what he'd heard. Jake was already scanning the area with a handheld audio detector, frowning at the readings. This doesn't make sense, Jake said. The ambient sound absorption here is off the charts. We should barely be able to hear each other talking, but somehow you're picking up clear vocalizations from hundreds of meters away? Not just picking them up, Marcus corrected. It was my voice. I'd recognize it anywhere. Sarah was checking her tablet, swiping through data. The preliminary geological surveys of this area didn't show anything anomalous. Standard Pacific Northwest forest composition. No unusual mineral deposits, no reality anchors needed. Then the surveys were wrong, Marcus said flatly. They set up a base camp in a small clearing, deploying proper foundation equipment now that they were alone. Portable reality anchors, just in case. A more sophisticated audio monitoring system, seismic sensors to detect movement. Sarah established a secure uplink to Site 43 and began transmitting their findings. The response came back within an hour. Site Director Hammond wanted them to continue the investigation. SCP-9821 Alpha was still the priority, but this new anomaly needed documentation. Hammond was authorizing the area's provisional designation as SCP-9821. The escaped anomaly would be reclassified as SCP-9821 Alpha once they understood what they were dealing with. Great, Jake muttered. We're not just finding one anomaly, we're standing in another one. They heard the next sound as the afternoon light began to fail. Jesus Christ, it's got Sarah! It's got her! Jake's voice screaming from somewhere to the east, raw terror in every syllable. All three of them froze. Jake stared at the direction of the sound, his face gone pale. I didn't say that, he whispered. I haven't said that. Yet, Sarah added quietly. The implication hung in the air like the fog. Marcus felt his stomach turn over. He'd worked with temporal anomalies before. Dealt with prophetic entities and causality violations and all the other ways the universe could twist itself into impossible shapes. But there was something particularly visceral about hearing your own death scream echoed back through the trees. We need to document this, Sarah said, falling back on protocol the way they all did when things got weird. If this is some kind of temporal echo, we need to understand the parameters. They spent the next 2 hours conducting tests, shouting predetermined phrases into the forest and waiting to see if they were played back. They weren't, recording their voices and playing them back through speakers. The forest absorbed the sound instantly, giving back nothing. Whatever the mechanism was, it was selective. It only played back sounds that hadn't happened yet. It's not an echo, Sarah concluded, studying her data. Echoes are reflections of past sounds. This is the opposite. It's reflecting sounds from the future. That's impossible, Jake said automatically, then laughed bitterly. Right, impossible. I forgot where I work for a second there. Marcus was studying the tree line, watching the shadows deepen. If it's playing back our future sounds, then everything we've heard is going to happen. The scream, my voice begging, Jake yelling about something getting you, Sarah. Not necessarily, Sarah argued. Temporal mechanics aren't deterministic. The future isn't fixed. Multiple timeline theory suggests... Sarah, Marcus turned to look at her. We heard ourselves dying, probably being killed by whatever SCP-9821-Alpha is. And we're still here, still looking for it, walking right toward whatever's going to kill us. The clearing was silent except for the soft hum of their equipment. Then Jake spoke up. So we leave. Call it in. Get a full MTF unit out here with proper temporal shielding. We're 3 field agents with ranger costumes and some fancy radios. This is above our pay grade. Marcus wanted to agree. Every instinct was telling him to extract, regroup, let someone else handle this nightmare. But he'd been with the Foundation long enough to know how it worked. Hammond won't authorize it, he said. Not yet. We don't have enough data. He'll say we're jumping at shadows, getting spooked by an anomaly we don't understand. He'll order us to continue the investigation. As if on cue, Sarah's tablet chimed with an incoming message. She read it, her expression confirming everything Marcus had just said. We're to continue the search for SCP-9821 Alpha. Document any additional auditory phenomena. Maintain our cover if we encounter civilians. She looked up. He's sending a proper containment team, but they won't be here until tomorrow morning. We're on our own until then. The decision was made. They would set up a proper perimeter, take shifts on watch, and wait for dawn. Standard procedure. Marcus had done it 100 times before, in a dozen different forests, hunting a dozen different monsters. This was the first time the forest itself was telling him he wouldn't survive it. Night fell like a hammer. The fog seemed to thicken with the darkness, reducing visibility to maybe 10 meters in any direction. They kept the camp lights low, just enough to see by. The audio monitoring system was set to record everything, sophisticated enough to triangulate the source of any sounds they picked up. Sarah took first watch. Marcus tried to sleep, lying in his tent with his weapon close at hand, listening to the absolute silence of the forest. It was wrong, that silence. Forests were supposed to be alive with sound at night. Insects, animals, the wind through the branches. Here there was nothing, just the muffled sound of his own breathing and the occasional crackle of Sarah's radio as she checked in with Jake. He must have dozed off eventually, because he woke to Sarah shaking his shoulder, her face tight with fear. "You need to hear this," she whispered. Marcus followed her to the monitoring station. Jake was already there, staring at the audio display like it might bite him. Sarah pressed play on the recorded file. At first, Marcus heard nothing. Then, so faint it was almost subliminal, voices. Multiple voices, overlapping, coming from all directions. The system had picked them up over the last hour, too quiet for human ears but clear enough for the sensitive microphones. Sarah enhanced the audio, filtering out the background noise. The voices resolved into clarity, and Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. It's wearing Jake's face. Oh God, it's wearing his face. The trees. Something's wrong with the trees. They're moving. Sarah, run. Just run. Contact Protocol 15. We need containment now. All of them. All their voices. Fragments of a future conversation, a future disaster played back in whispers through the forest. But it was the last voice that made Marcus's hands shake. His own voice, calm and professional, speaking in the clipped tone he used for official reports. "This is Special Agent Chen, final log. If anyone finds this recording, do not enter the Cascade National Forest Sector 7. The anomaly is not what we thought. It's not just the forest. It's not SCP-9821 Alpha, it's both. They're the same thing. The forest is the organism, and Alpha was just a lure. It wanted the Foundation to send people. It feeds on." The recording cut off in a sound that might have been static or might have been screaming. "Timestamp says we recorded that 2 hours from now," Sarah said quietly. "Or will record it. Temporal grammar gets confusing." Jake was pacing, his ranger uniform rumpled. Okay, this is simple. We leave. Right now. We pack up and we hike out and we let Hammond send someone else to die in this nightmare forest. We can't." Sarah was still staring at her tablet. "I've been monitoring the GPS. Look at our position." She turned the screen toward them. Marcus stared at the blinking dots representing their current location. They were exactly where they should be, in the clearing where they'd set up camp. But the trail markers they'd passed on the way in, the ones that should have shown their path out, were gone. According to the GPS, they were surrounded by unbroken forest in every direction. "That's a glitch," Jake said. "Has to be. The equipment's malfunctioning." "All of it?" Sarah pulled out her personal phone, showing the same impossible reading. "Mine too? What about yours?" Marcus checked. Same thing. They were in the center of a forest that, according to every GPS signal, had no exit. "The anomaly is expanding," Sarah said, "or we're already inside it more deeply than we thought. Space is getting affected along with time." Marcus forced himself to think, to push past the fear and use his training. The voices, their warnings, future us trying to tell present us what's happening. We know it's not just the forest. We know Alpha is involved somehow. We know we're supposed to record a final log. That gives us information we can use. "Information to do what?" Jake demanded. "Change the future? You heard what we said, what we're going to say. We're dead. We're already dead, we just haven't caught up to it yet." "No," Marcus stood, decision crystallizing. "If the future was fixed, there'd be no point in us hearing it. The fact that we can means we can change it. We just need to understand the mechanism." Sarah was nodding slowly. "The trees. I kept hearing something about the trees moving. And you said the forest is the organism, not just habitat for an anomaly, but the anomaly itself." Marcus looked out at the tree line, at the massive trunks disappearing into fog. "How did you fight a forest? How did you contain something that was already all around you?" "We need to find SCP-9821 Alpha," he said. "Whatever it is, it's connected to this. The forest wanted us here. It's been hurting us, maybe since we arrived. Alpha's escape might not have been an escape at all." They geared up properly now, abandoning any pretense of being park rangers. Foundation tactical gear, weapons loaded with specialized ammunition, portable reality anchors clipped to their belts. If they were going to walk into their own deaths, they'd do it prepared. The monitoring system had triangulated the source of the most recent vocalizations. Deeper into the forest, naturally. Always deeper. They left the camp equipment running, transmitting constantly back to Site 43. If they didn't make it out, at least there would be data. They moved in formation, Sarah in the center with her tablet and sensors, Marcus and Jake flanking her with weapons ready. The fog was worse now, so thick Marcus could barely see 10 feet ahead. The trees loomed out of the whiteness like giants, their bark rough and dark and somehow aware. "Sound absorption is increasing," Sarah reported quietly. "Our voices are barely carrying 5 meters now." Marcus could feel it, that sensation of the forest pressing in, hungry for sound. He fired his weapon once, a single shot into the ground. The report was shockingly loud in the deadened air, but it faded almost instantly, swallowed by the trees. They walked for an hour. Or maybe it was 10 minutes. Time felt slippery here, unreliable. Marcus kept checking his watch, but the numbers seemed wrong, jumping forward and backward without pattern. Then Jake stopped, holding up a fist in the tactical signal for freeze. "There," he whispered, pointing. Through the fog, maybe 20 meters ahead, something moved. Not animal movement, not the sway of wind through branches. Something deliberate, something that wanted to be seen. It looked like a person at first, humanoid shape, roughly Jake's height and build. But as they got closer, as the fog shifted and revealed more detail, Marcus saw the truth. It was wearing Jake. Not his face like a mask, but his entire appearance like a costume made of meat and memory. The features were perfect, exact down to the small scar over Jake's left eyebrow from a containment breach 3 years ago. But the eyes were wrong, too dark, too deep, like looking into wells that went down forever. "Contact," Marcus said into his radio, knowing Site 43 was recording everything. "Visual confirmation of SCP-9821 Alpha. It's a mimetic entity, currently displaying human form." The thing that looked like Jake tilted its head, studying them with those wrong eyes. Then it smiled, and Marcus saw that its teeth went back too far, too many of them, arranged in spiraling rows. "Hello," it said in Jake's voice. Perfect inflection, perfect tone. "I've been waiting for you." The real Jake raised his weapon. "What are you?" "I'm you," the thing said. "Or I will be. Time is funny here. The trees remember everything. They remember the future just as clearly as the past." Sarah's tablet was going crazy, readings spiking across every sensor. Massive temporal distortion, reality index dropping. We're in the center of it now. The Jake thing laughed. "You're in me now. The forest and I, we're the same. Have been for a very long time. We got lonely out here, you see. So far from everything. So we learned to call out, to bring people. The Foundation was kind enough to create something we could use as bait." "SCP-9821 Alpha was never anomalous," Marcus said, understanding clicking into place. "You made it seem that way. Made us think something escaped, so we'd come looking." "Smart," the thing agreed. "The Foundation is always so eager to recover what it thinks it's lost. And you brought so many sounds with you. Fear, confusion, those delicious death screams from futures that haven't happened yet. The trees are full of them now. We'll play them back for years, savoring every note." It took a step forward, and Marcus saw the ground beneath it ripple. Not ground, roots. The entire forest floor was roots, woven together, alive and aware and hungry. Jake fired. 3 rounds, center mass, exactly where he'd been trained. The bullets passed through the Jake thing like it was made of fog, punching harmlessly into a tree trunk behind it. "I'm not really here," it said, still smiling. "Not yet. This is just an echo, just the forest showing you what's coming." Then the screaming started. All around them, from every direction, their voices crying out in terror and pain. The sounds they'd been hearing all day, all playing at once, a cacophony of their own future deaths. Marcus heard himself begging, heard Sarah crying, heard Jake's voice cut off mid-word in a wet gurgle. "The trees remember," the thing said, its voice somehow cutting through the noise. and soon they'll make those memories real. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. The reality anchors. If this is a temporal distortion, we can stabilize it. They activated the portable anchors, feeling the immediate pushback as the devices fought to normalize local space-time. The screaming faltered, grew quieter. The Jake thing flickered, its form becoming translucent. "Clever," it said, "but you're still inside me, still walking toward your own echoes. You can delay it, but you can't stop what the forest has already heard." Marcus was thinking furiously. The forest absorbed sound and played it back. But it was playing back future sounds, which meant causality was already broken here, which meant it's a loop, he said. The forest hears our deaths and plays them back, which causes us to panic, which leads to our deaths. It's a closed temporal causality loop. "So we break the loop," Jake said. "We don't do what the echoes say we do." "You can't avoid your fate," the thing said, but Marcus heard something in its voice now. Uncertainty. Fear. "Watch us," he said. They moved quickly. Sarah pulling up the audio logs, identifying every phrase they'd heard their future selves speak. Marcus organized them into a timeline, a sequence of events that led to their deaths. "We need to do the opposite," he said. "Every choice the echoes imply we make the opposite choice." The forest seemed to shudder around them. Trees creaked. The fog thickened. The Jake thing was flickering faster now, its form unstable. "The entity is losing coherence," Sarah reported. "The reality anchors are helping, but I think it's more than that. We're creating a paradox. If we don't die the way we're supposed to, the forest never records those sounds, which means we never hear them, which means the loop collapses," Marcus finished. The Jake thing opened its mouth, and now the voice was wrong, distorted, like multiple voices speaking at once. "You don't understand. The trees need to feed. They need the sounds. They need to find another food source," Jake said and fired again. This time the bullets didn't pass through. The thing was becoming solid as the timeline stabilized, as the future it had predicted failed to manifest. It shrieked, a sound that had nothing human in it, and lunged. Marcus met it with containment foam, the specialized foundation equipment coating it in rapidly hardening polymer. It thrashed, its form shifting, cycling through different appearances. Jake, Sarah, Marcus himself. Other people, probably previous victims, faces the forest remembered. "It's manifesting fully," Sarah said. "The paradox is forcing it to exist in the present instead of existing across multiple timelines," which meant they could contain it. The fight was brief and brutal. The thing was strong, but it was also confused, its temporal nature disrupted by their refusal to follow the predicted timeline. They got it restrained, properly bound with equipment designed to hold far worse things than a creature that lived in echoes. As they secured it, the forest began to change. The fog lifted. The oppressive silence faded, replaced by normal forest sounds. Birds, wind, the rustle of small animals in the undergrowth. Marcus's watch showed a normal time again. Sarah's GPS displayed the trail markers, showing them a clear path back to civilization. "We broke the loop," Jake said, sounding amazed. "We actually broke it." Marcus wasn't celebrating yet. "Sarah, what's the status on the temporal distortion?" She checked her tablet. "Declining. Fast. Whatever the entity was doing to the forest, containing it has stopped the effect. Local space-time is normalizing." They hauled their prisoner back to the camp, calling in the extraction team. Hammond was going to have a field day with this one. A forest that absorbed sound and replayed it from the future. An entity that fed on temporal echoes of death. It was the kind of anomaly that would keep researchers busy for decades. By the time the containment team arrived at dawn, everything was almost normal. The forest was just a forest again. The trees were just trees. The only evidence anything had happened was the bound entity and the audio recordings Sarah had made. Marcus gave his report to the MTF commander, a stern woman named Collins who'd seen enough weirdness not to be surprised by much. "You got lucky," she said. "Temporal loops are nasty. Most people don't figure out they're in one until it's too late." "We had help," Marcus said, thinking of those echoes. Future versions of themselves, desperate enough to find a way to warn their past selves. "We listened to what the forest was telling us. We just interpreted it differently than it expected." The entity was loaded into a specialized containment unit, bound with temporal stabilizers to keep it from shifting through time again. As they sealed the unit, Marcus caught a glimpse of its face. It was wearing his appearance now, staring at him with eyes that held centuries of hunger and loneliness. "The trees will remember," it whispered. "They always remember." Then the unit closed and it was gone. Site-43 reclassified the entire forest sector as SCP-9821. The escaped anomaly they'd been hunting was designated SCP-9821-Alpha, now properly contained and being studied by the Temporal Anomalies Department. The forest itself was SCP-9821-Prime, subject to ongoing monitoring but no longer actively hostile. Whatever connection it had shared with Alpha, severing that connection had neutralized the temporal echo effect. Marcus, Sarah, and Jake were debriefed for 3 days straight. Every detail documented, every moment analyzed. The Foundation wanted to understand exactly how they'd broken the causality loop, hoping to develop protocols for similar situations in the future. On the 4th day, Marcus was finally cleared to return to his quarters. He was exhausted, running on coffee and adrenaline, ready to sleep for about 16 hours straight. But first he had to file his final report. He sat at his computer, pulling up the standard form, and began to type. Special Agent Marcus Chen, final report on Operation Cascade. SCP-9821 and SCP-9821-Alpha are contained. The temporal echo phenomenon has been neutralized. Recommended protocols for future encounters with causality-violating anomalies are attached as Addendum 9821-7. He paused, thinking about those voices in the forest. His own voice, begging and screaming. The future that didn't happen because they'd refused to let it. He added one more line to the report. Additional note, the future is not fixed, even when you can hear it screaming from the trees. He submitted the report and finally allowed himself to sleep. 3 weeks later, Marcus was assigned to a new case, an abandoned shopping mall in Ohio where people kept reporting seeing themselves in mirrors, but the reflections were always slightly wrong, slightly off, slightly dead, just another day at the Foundation. But sometimes late at night when he couldn't sleep, Marcus thought about that forest, about the trees that remembered futures that never happened, about an entity that fed on echoes of death, sustained by sounds that existed in the space between what was and what might have been. He wondered if the trees still remembered those screams, even though the timeline that created them had collapsed. He wondered if somewhere in that forest, in the spaces between the branches, his own voice was still begging for help that never came. The Foundation's official position was that the anomaly was contained, the temporal distortions had ceased, the forest was safe. But Marcus had learned a long time ago that safe was a relative term when you worked for the Foundation. And sometimes, when the wind was right, he swore he could hear it, distant and faint, like an echo of an echo of an echo. His own voice calling from a future that didn't exist anymore. Calling from the recursive woods.